In this video, I'm going to go over multi-agent and component collections and when you should use which one and why they're different. So this video was brought to you by the Community Summit North America. I will actually be speaking at the Community Summit for North America. It's the largest Microsoft AI and Business Solutions user conference on the planet, guys. And from October 19th to the 23rd at the Gaylord Palms in Orlando, Florida, come join me and 5,500 others as we explore how AI is redefining Microsoft business applications. And you can get this scoop at summitna.com. Please come out and support me and come see me. I'll be happy to answer questions and things at this event. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. And many thanks to them for supporting videos like this to make it easier for me to keep making content for you guys. So let's first start with understanding multi-agent orchestration inside of Copilot Studio so that you can understand what we're talking about when we're talking about multi-agent. And then we'll go into how that's different than component collections and why you would use one versus the other, because there is some overlap in the way these things work or the way that you might want to use them. But a lot of people get confused and think that the component model inside of Copilot Studio is the same as multi-agent, which is not necessarily true. So if we think about multi-agent orchestration, it is where we have different agents that are connecting and being able to orchestrate to say, this set of information, or when this user requests something, I'm going to send it over to this set of tools or this different collection of information so that that way it can interface with the user in a very specific way. So we'll take a look at this. So let's look at the underlying technology really quick and make sure that we understand how the orchestrator works with multi-agent orchestration and the different options we have in that first. So if we first start off with just understanding the orchestrator and the way the orchestrator works inside of Copilot Studio, you basically have a tool that's going to go in and understand the concept of what the user is saying. And based upon what the user said, it will create a plan. And that plan will go and consume all the different topics and the different knowledge and tools that are available inside of the Copilot Studio agent. And with that, it can figure out how to assemble those and then generate a response back to the user. And so this is in general how the conversational orchestrator works inside of Copilot Studio. Now, one of the things that was added inside of Copilot Studio is the ability to also be able to have something called a focused agent or an inline agent. And when you go to create one of these, the concept of this is that you're going to build like a virtual container that allows you to be able to say, inside of my agent, here is a set of tools that I want to behave in a very specific way. So that allows you to give prompts and things like this to explain how this group of tools should be used and how it should behave. And so when you think of that, that's where we talk about an inline agent or a focused agent. Now, most people don't have a hard time understanding these. Where we start to get a bigger problem is when we get into connected agents. Now, connected agents, when we add this in, this is where we connect to something outside of the agent that we are building inside of Copilot Studio. And in this space, we can connect to Copilot Studio agents that we built that are available and are set so that they can be consumed. But we can also connect to M365 agents that have been created in the M365 Agents SDK. We can also go and connect to Azure Foundry implementations. And we also have Fabric data agents that we might want to connect to. And as you can see with these, those are just connected to your agent. And now what happens is there is something called the agent-to-agent protocol that allows the Copilot Studio parent agent to be able to understand and take an inventory of everything that is available and the tool sets that are available inside of those connected agents. And by doing this, it really allows you to be able to build a way for one agent to be able to ask another agent to take on that particular request. And the user doesn't really see this on the back end. It just automatically happens. And so a lot of people think that what this means is that a connected agent is some form of a microservice. But when you think about a microservice is stateless by definition, where a conversational agent is stateful by definition. And you start to get into things like, well, what about if I uploaded my user profile into a variable and now I need to hand that user profile over to a connected agent? And how does that connected agent even understand that that's what I'm passing it? And so just be aware that there is a state transfer concept that you need to think about whenever you start doing connected agents. And things will come out and make this easier over time, I'm sure, but just be aware that you don't really want to think of this as some sort of reusable component or building things together. And I'll explain why as we go into how these two different agents are different, and then we'll go into why that's different than component collections as well. So let's first make sure that we understand which you should use and when you should use what when it comes to building different agents inside of Copilot Studio. So when we look at this and we say, oh, well, when should I actually use a focused agent? Well, a focused agent is really for you to be able to build kind of containerization, or your ability to say, this is the rule set that I want for a set of tools that are available inside of my agent. And this is going to give you the ability to have it where you can have a set of tools that behave in a very specific way. A lot of people say, well, give me an example of why I might do this. Well, imagine if you have an HR set of information, maybe knowledge and some tools that are available for HR scenarios. And then you have another set of tools that are available and should behave in a certain way for IT service management or for IT related issues. And so those could be in completely different agents that are inside of your Copilot Studio agent itself, your master agent. And that would allow you to be able to make sure that only the tools that are appropriate for IT are being used, and the knowledge. And so when someone starts talking about IT support related topics, it's going to limit the scope down to those particular things, and it's going to behave and act like some sort of IT support agent. But whenever you start talking about HR scenarios, it will do the opposite. It will go and do the things that you've given instructions, and the set of tools and knowledge will only be used for the stuff that is HR related. Now, a lot of people look at this and go, well, then that's really confusing about topics and what's the difference between a topic and an agent. At a high level, a topic is going to it's going to build you a custom tool. It's going to give you a tool. It doesn't necessarily give you a group of tools to be able to behave in a certain way. And that's really the difference between those. So I'll probably do another video around just the difference between those, but I wanted to start off with what is a focused agent. Now, if we move over and we talk about connected agents, the intent of this is that I have two completely different applications, and this is really application integration, where I have two completely different endpoints. I have two different dev teams that are building completely separate applications. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow an application integration between the two. So when you do this, you need to think about the fact that this is going to have different application lifecycle management. You're going to have different dev teams, different security setups and things of this nature. You need to think about authentication and how you're going to handle single sign-on and all of this. Whereas in focused agents, we didn't have to worry about that because it was all still one application. So this is two completely different applications, and you want them to be completely different because maybe there's a situation where, let's go back to our IT and our HR scenario in an employee assistant. So imagine we were rolling up into an employee assistant. It has IT and HR capabilities. Well, imagine I have a bunch of people that are contractors, and those contractors don't need the HR stuff. They only need the IT service management or be able to open IT things. And so what you can do is have the IT service management or the IT piece be a connected agent, because people will connect to that directly. And then you can roll it up into a master agent, and that master agent could have a connected agent and a child, and the child is HR. But no one ever connects to HR unless they're going through the employee assistant. So this is an example of why you might go about doing something like this, but just be aware that when we start thinking about this, and again, a connected agent will have state. It will always have a state of the conversation that has to be maintained. And so while we can pass the conversational context of what you're talking about to the connected agent, you also have to think about, are there variables, are there things that you are going to store in your parent that you might need to hand downstream to the connected agent. And the same thing happens if you built 15 different connected agents and pulled them into a parent. What if you're talking to a connected agent and it has some variables that are in it that you want to pass back to the parent that's then going to pass to another child? Again, complexity here, guys, right? So think about the fact that you may not necessarily want that type of experience. So the next thing we want to talk about is we want to move on to component collections, because component collections is probably one of the least understood pieces of Copilot Studio that I think most people should be using if they don't know about them. And that's because when you go and you build a component collection, you're basically building reusable assets that are solution aware, so that way you can do things like make them managed or unmanaged and be able to have it where you can rebuild, you don't have to rebuild the same thing over and over in all your different agents. You can actually go in and say, here is a specific implementation for let's say for ServiceNow, for example, and then make that reusable for anyone in your organization to be able to go do what you want to do. Just like you could create a set of custom entities or explanations of different terms that you prefer to be used within your organization. And instead of you having to instantiate like a template, which would be, I want to instantiate a whole new agent to be able to get this baseline, it gives you the ability to do it as a subcomponent of an agent. So again, component collections are really where the component model starts to come in inside of Copilot Studio. And these things have a lot of control that you can do as we go into like different version management and things of that nature. So let's first take a look at a component collection and sort of how that works. So if we go back into our whole orchestrator component and the way that this was all working, what you're going to see is that when we are dealing with component collections are inside of your agent. So they're inside of that project that you're building inside of Copilot Studio. They are not independent of that particular code base. And so what happens is that means they are versioned with your Copilot Studio implementation. Now, here's the weird part. Because it's a reusable asset, when you modify it, you're modifying it for everyone. So be aware that in an environment, it's like a shared DLL. So if you look, you're going to see you can contain inside of it all these different pieces that you might want. Maybe you've got a set of topics or tools or connectors and prompts that you want to be able to bring in and make those things reusable over and over in your organization. You can absolutely go and do that. And because it's solution aware, yes, you can make them managed and unmanaged. And we'll talk more about the benefits of that as we go on. But just be aware, think of it that this is the same concept of containerization in a sense, but what you're really doing is putting these into a solution. And so what you're doing is saying, I want my solution that I'm building my agent in to be dependent upon another solution, and then I can modify that solution and version that solution independently of the rest of the agent, which also means that I can give you guys an example of a chit chat agent or chit chat module that you can then go import into your organization and just add it right into your agents. So you don't have to go back and redo this from scratch. So just be aware, this is a very different type of concept for you guys. And I think you'll like this a lot because it gives you the ability to have different developers working on different things and being able to say, I want the developers only to work on these particular assets and then produce them and release them to the organization so that that way they can develop those independent of the main agent and they can be versioned independently. So let's take a look at what I mean by that. So let's first start with what if we took and we built this collection of information or these component collections, and I made one that I wanted to be able to use for case management as an example. And what I want to do is I want to make that case management capability available to my organization so that they can use it in multiple agents. So imagine I have an HR agent and an IT agent, and I want to be able to say, I want a shared component that is case management. And I want to be able to let that maker be able to consume that if they want it. And then maybe there's a third agent that comes along or something that wants to be able to use it. They can just consume this on their own. They can say, hey, I'd like to pull that into my project and be able to take a dependency on this particular connected or this component collection rather. So again, these are sort of the key concepts behind a component collection is because it is just a shared group of components, you can take those and make those available to multiple agents. Now you can also do other things such as this. You can also say that case management, for example, could be created as a component collection and it could be set up as managed, which means it's locked down. While the HR agent and the IT agent makers who are building those can use case management into their agent, they can't modify it. So this is where Center of Excellences are really excited about component collections because it gives them the ability to release uneditable, reusable assets for the organization into an environment. So now what we have is we have case management available and we can say this is the way we do case management for our organization and people can use it but they can't modify it. But at the same sense, imagine that I also had IT knowledge and IT knowledge, maybe I want to let people continue to add to IT knowledge, but whenever I add to IT knowledge, I want it to add to everyone across the board. In that case, we could leave it as unmanaged and be able to modify it accordingly and then take the versions into consideration. In both cases, it's going to require us to go through a versioning process, and I'm going to go through that versioning process for you right now so that you can kind of understand how this gives you the control to the maker to decide when they're going to take a change. So let's take a look at that. So using our scenario that we had where we had an HR agent and an IT agent, and imagine in this case that they're both at version 1.0. And then I also have my case management component collection on the right-hand side here and IT knowledge on the right-hand side. And what those are going to have is those are also going to be at version 1.0. So each of these are versioned at 1.0. Now, imagine I want to move to the next step. Let's imagine that I want to go and take case management and I want to update it to version 1.1. Well, when I go and I update it to version 1.1, what's going to happen is that the HR and IT agent will need to get version to 1.1 by being published out in order for the changes to affect their actual users. So while in the test environment, I will see it affect me as soon as I update case management to version 1.1 until there is a publish action for the HR agent and the IT agent to take them to the next version release. I'm not going to actually see that as a user. So that means that the HR agent could choose to go and accept version 1.1 of my case management completely on a separate timeline than the IT agent. And notice that the IT knowledge can continue to stay in version 1.0. So imagine then I wanted to also have it where the IT agent made some changes within itself. It can actually go to 1.2, still dependent on 1.1 of case management and of IT knowledge 1.0, but I can make modifications into the IT agent completely on its own. So that gives me full control as the maker on when I want to be able to take all these different changes. And when I am ready and I've done my testing, I can go through the publishing process or through my DevOps model to be able to say, okay, let's go through application lifecycle management to be able to push out those changes to my users. Another concept is, imagine that I'm the person who makes case management and I have version 1.1, but I want a major release. I want to go to a version 2 because we've got a whole new case management system on the back end and I need to make sure that I can release this new major update to case management. So imagine I have this, and then what I want to be able to do is I want to say, oh, okay, I'm going to release that. But imagine that the IT service management, case management system is being moved from, let's say from ServiceNow to Dynamics. And I need to be able to get that new case management capability out. And so the IT management system, we want to be able to version that over, or we want to be able to release this 2.0 version. So what you could do as the maker of case management, you could make a new component collection that is a completely stand on its own for case management that you would refer to as the new version or the V2 version of that. And then you could maintain the V1.1 because maybe that's still the HR case management system for now. Imagine all these different scenarios that can happen here. So now what we can do is we can have the IT agent version to 1.3, take in the V2 of the new case management system and still maintain the IT knowledge information as well in V1.1.0. So again, a lot of control for the maker. And again, until the maker hits the publish button, you're not going to see these changes coming downstream to the actual agent that's being used. So let's take a look at why you would use each of these different things, and let's go back and explore the difference between connected agents and component collections and why you would use one versus the other. So now let's talk about the difference between when you would use component collections and use connected agents. And so we'll start with a component collection and we'll talk about those first. And imagine here is where you want to get reusable assets that work independently and they're versioned completely independently. You also get the ability for the maker to determine when they want to take the change. Now, you also don't have to manage independent applications. It's just components within the application itself. And so you don't have to worry about all these different integrations that you're going to have. You also may want to manage communication and testing of releases as part of your release strategy for your consumers. So think of it that you want to be able to say, hey, I'm ready to move to this new version. And I want to do all the communication out to make sure that those people know that this is coming and things of that nature. So if I make a new component collection, I can communicate that out, and then I'm not breaking somebody whenever I go to update it. They can choose when to take that new version, which is really nice. And it also allows us that ability that a lot of people think you have to go to a connected agent to get, which is the ability to have different developers being able to work in groups and be able to build different parts of the same application. So again, this is where I don't necessarily have to build all the complexity of application integration and connected agents just to be able to have departmental separation or developer separation of assets that I want to be built into my application. And so this is a really, really powerful capability when you think about it from that perspective. So now let's talk about using connected agents, because I don't want to sound like connected agents is a bad thing. Connected agents is a great thing. It just has its place, right? And we want to make sure we understand and use the right tools in the right place. So when we talk about connected agents, that's really where we have multiple teams and developers managing them independently again, right? So we do have completely disparate teams, but this might also be a situation where it's a completely different department. It's someone who is building a standalone application that I have no insight over and I don't know what they're doing and I don't need to manage them. I just want to take a dependency on them. And the other part is that while today you have to publish to be able to get the parent agent to see the changes, that is not going to be the case long term. That's actually going to change before the official release of this. So what you want to be able to do is you want to think about it that this is where I don't want to have to wait for a publish of my agent to be able to get the changes that are happening in this downstream agent. And there are situations where people want that experience, but also know that that means that you have to think about all the different communication that needs to happen. And this is where I would tell you, you should think about making sure that you create think of it as like an integration environment. I would highly encourage integration environments if you're going to do connected agents. The other is that keep in mind that means that they're going to have their own dedicated settings. They're going to be completely independent. So if you need to manage the way that it's behaving and the way that the descriptions and the way the tools are going to be packaged together, just know that while you can do that inside of a component collection, if you wanted to be able to say this agent, this container of all these tools needs to behave in a very specific way, and I want that controlled by someone completely independent, then that's going to be a place where you might want to do it as well. The other is just be aware that your application lifecycle management means that these things are completely independent of one another. And again, you got to treat it like it's an integration. So think of integration environments and integration testing. And then if you want to change, just be aware that you need to make sure that you understand that in the production implementation of this, you are not going to have a need for you to publish. And it's very key that the major difference here is one, control, the maker has control of when the change goes in, and the other is the thing that your consuming's maker is making the decision of when your users are going to get the information. So what I want to do here is I want to give you a quick demo of how this all works. And we'll start with connected agents, and I'll focus only on connected agents in the demo because that's usually where people get the most confused. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this empty agent that I've got built. You can see there's nothing in it. And I'm just going to come in and say I want to add an agent. And I'm not going to focus on focused. I'm going to do a connected agent, which I can do right here. And then I'm going to take the Porsche 911 manual one that I have demoed before, and I'm even going to come in and modify the description to be able to show that as the maker of the person who's consuming a connected agent, I can actually add additional information about when I want to be able to use this. And I'm going to say to pass the conversation history, and we'll go ahead and add it. Now what I'm going to do, once it's been added, I'm going to come over to the test pane here, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I want to check for the status of an order from Porsche. And what's going to happen is you'll see that the connected agent will be understood by the parent, and it understands that it has tools available to be able to go do this, and it's going to go get me that information. Now we also have the ability inside of this to be able to check for an info packet or request an info packet. And as you can see, once we run this, it's going to go in and fire a topic. And you can see it's asking me for my name. But let's go in and actually take a look at the connected agent that this is connected to by switching over to the Porsche agent. So I'm going to go and do that. So now that we're looking at the Porsche agent, I'm going to click into the topics and let's look at this request info packet. Now, one of the things that I want to do inside of this particular agent is I'm going to go ahead and show you that inside of this agent, if I come in and I ask the question for I want to get an info packet from Porsche, you're going to see that it's going to fire this topic and it's going to ask me what is my name. So that is something that we can absolutely go do. Now let's look and see what happens if I create an error. So I'm going to come in to the request info packet and I'm going to change this from to make an error here to fire off, and I'm going to make it where I'm just going to change this to is equal to, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and I'll refresh our conversation, and what you're going to see is that now when I ask this exact same question, what's going to happen is inside of this agent, I'm going to end up getting an error. Now, the thing is that you can see that I've saved this. Now, I'm going to jump back over and go to the multi-agent. And what I want you to see is that when I go to multi-agent, even though I've saved it on the other side, and I come in and I say, I want an info packet from Porsche, you're going to see that it's not going to actually do anything different. I'm not getting the error because of the fact that I never published. So now if we go back over to the Porsche 911 manual one, and we go ahead and hit publish, and now that this went through and it went ahead and published, what I can do is I can flip back over now, and let's look and see if our agent is getting the error now. So now we're back over into the multi-agent agent that we've been building that's connected to our Porsche 911, and I ask this question again, and you're going to see that what we're going to get now is we're going to get the error, because until the maker who has created the connected agent has published, you won't see the changes. But as soon as they publish, it's actively changing without a publish on the other side inside of my multi-agent configuration. I'm automatically getting the change inside of this particular one. So now let's go and take a look at how that's different than a chit chat component or a component collection. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in to settings. I'm going to go to component collections, and we'll see here that we have a bunch of different capabilities here. And one of the things I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and add the chit chat agent capabilities in, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this PII checker capability in as well. So these are two different component collections that I have added into this particular agent. And just so that you can see that these are here now, what's going to happen is when we go back and we take a look at the topics that are inside of this, you'll now see that we have a chit chat and a PII checker capability in here. Now there's two different things that we want to take a look at whenever we're looking at this. One is, let's go ahead and say something to test it to see that we can see that chit chat is going to fire. And you can see here that I can say, hey there, I like cats, do you? And what we're going to see is it's going to go fire the chit chat topic. And you can see that it actually responded and it came back with an error message. And so apparently we've got some sort of issue inside of our component collection, which we're going to fix by versioning it to a version that is the new version, because in the 1.2 version of the component collection I released, there was an actual bug. And so I need to be able to update that to 1.3. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. And also, let's go look at the other side of the house, which was this PII checker. Now, you'll notice that the difference here is this is grayed out, and you'll see that both of these are component collections that I've added. And if I click in on PII checker, you can see that it's managed, so I can't really modify it. So I can see what it's doing and I can understand what it's doing and I can use the PII checker, but I don't have the necessary responsibility of keeping this up to date or being able to modify it. Whereas on the chit chat component, when we were inside of it, you'll notice that this one has been in an unmanaged state. So I could come in and modify things if I'd want, but when I modify it, I'm modifying it for everyone. Now, when you're going to produce a solution like I did with the chit chat, I want to give you guys the ability to modify it and be able to do your own customizations to the chit chat module, which is why it comes out to you guys as an unmanaged solution. And then you can decide to make a managed solution of it for your organization if you so choose. So let's go ahead and update chit chat and fix our error by going to 1.3 version, and let's see how easy that is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and update to chit chat v3. So our v1.3, and we're going to do that by saying we want to import an agent. Now, while we are saying we're going to import an agent, just know that component collections are going to be a solution. So this is how we're going to come in and say we want to import a solution. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select import solution and I'm going to browse and I'm going to go to my new chit chat module here and I'm going to select it and say open. Now, once we've got it here and we've said that we want our chit chat solution here, I'm going to go ahead and say that I would like to import it. Now, notice that both over here and here you can see that it's at 1.2 and it's saying it's going to update it to 1.3. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I would like to update it to 1.3, and we're going to see that as the solution gets done importing, we're going to see a version change of the chit chat solution to 1.3. And just like that, we've imported to 1.3, and you can see that now with the 1.3 version, let's flip back to the agent. And let's just do a quick Shift F5 just to refresh so that we get the latest changes. And what I want you to notice is that the language, see, now we have multi-language support in it as well. So that was one of the features that came in as an upgrade. And let's test to see if our error is gone now with our bug that we wanted to deal with. And what you're going to see is, voila, we no longer have our error anymore. And we go through the entire process of going and building all of this. So now the only last thing to do to make it available to my users, because right now what I've done is I've only made sure that I've versioned this inside of my development environment. But in order for this change to make it to the actual users of my solution, I'll have to hit this publish button and go through the publishing action. And once that completes, now the users actually get this. So you can see there's a very big difference between the person who's having to hit the publish button to decide when the user gets the update, and allowing you to be able to test this in your development environment before the publish actually happens. So while I was the maker and I updated the solution for you, you were in control all the way through the release cycle of when that is actually being released for you. And in the case that it's unmanaged, you can even modify it and customize it to the needs that you have before you push it out. So it gives you the ability to build these reusable assets over and over. Well, I hope you liked this video today and found it very helpful. And for more videos on Copilot Studio, please like and subscribe to my channel. And as always, you can try Copilot Studio at aka.ms/trycopilotstudio.